started by showing you how to get around in Windows 10.
Good.
All right, so when you log into Windows 10, and we're going to show how to log in a little bit later, but after you log in, you're going to see this, which looks kind of familiar from old versions of Windows. This background area is the desktop, and just like in older versions of Windows, you can put icons on your desktop. You can save files to your desktop. This is a brand new install, so we don't have a lot here except for the recycle bin. Just like older versions of Windows, as we delete things, they'll show up in the recycle bin. If we deleted them accidentally, we can go inside and get them out. Or if we want to empty the recycle bin, then we can right-click and choose Empty Recycle Bin. There's nothing in there right now. Along the bottom, we have the taskbar. Now, one of the interesting things about Windows 10 versus Windows 8, in Windows 8, sometimes when you went into an application, the taskbar went away. And that confused people. You had this kind of disjointed sense of where you were because the taskbar wasn't always there. Well, the good news is in Windows 10, the taskbar is always there. From left to right across the taskbar, we start off with our Start button, which leads to our Start menu. Now, the Start menu looks a little bit different than it did, say, in Windows 7, but it's a lot of the same stuff. Over here on the left-hand side, at the very top, we have our name, and if we click that, we get options for things like changing our account, locking this PC if we don't want anybody to access it while we run to get a drink of water or something, and we can log out if it's a computer that more than one person uses. Below that, it keeps our most used applications. So whatever you've used most recently is going to go here. Below that, we have some pre-built-in icons for things like our File Explorer, our settings, a power button. One of the big complaints of Windows 8 was there was no power button.
I was missing that power button.
That was one of the biggest issues of Windows 8. Now power is right back where it used to be, right here on the Start menu. And you can see we can choose to restart, shut down, or put it to sleep. And then we have All Apps. Now, if you look over on the right, what we have here are tiled versions of the apps that we choose to put here. This is all customizable. These are the apps that came here by default. We can customize all of these. We're going to show how to do that a little bit later, but if I wanted to move this over here, I could do that. If I wanted to make one of these larger, I could do that, and so on. So we're going to customize this later to make it the way that we want. But not all of our applications are going to be here. So if there's an application that you want to get to that's not here, there's two things you can do. One is to click on All Apps and scroll through. You see it's an alphabetical list of every application on your computer. But another easier way to do it is just to type it into the search box down here and let Windows find it. Before we do that, let me show you one more thing about the Start menu. If we go back to the default, one of the things you can do is you can resize this entire menu. So if you don't like it being so big, you can go over here to the right and you can drag it in one step. That's really all you can do. If you want to make it shorter, you can make it a little bit shorter, but there's a limit there too. So it gives you a little bit of customization for the size, but not a lot. We'll put that back out to full size. Now back to the taskbar. The second thing, this is Cortana. Cortana is a really important feature in Windows 8. We're going to spend an entire module talking about it. Basically, anytime you see this little sort of glowing circle, that's the Cortana symbol. But one of the things it does is it integrates all of your search functions. So if there was something you were looking for, like let's say you wanted to run the calculator and you couldn't find it. Well, I could just type in calculator, and you can see it found it right here at the top of the list. And I can click it, and there's my calculator app. So this entire gray area right here, that is Cortana, and we're going to talk about her some more later.
Don't you mean it?
No, I mean her, but we'll talk about her later.
And that's why it's a gray area.
And that's why it's a gray area. Moving across the taskbar, we have this thing called Task View, and we're going to talk about that in another module too, because that's kind of cool. Moving along the right, you've got the icons for your pinned apps. So you can pin an app to your taskbar. It's kind of like making a shortcut, so you can get to it pretty easily. And we can customize all of these. These are the defaults that come here. So if I open, let's say, File Explorer, two things happen. One, the Explorer opens up. On the taskbar, you can see it's highlighted gray, which lets me know that's the active application. It also has a little blue line underneath it, and that's what lets me know that it's running. So if I open something else, let's say I go over here to my Start menu and I open Calculator. Now the active application is Calculator because it's kind of highlighted gray, but it's got a blue line underneath it. Explorer still has the blue line underneath it, so I know those two are still running. If I click over here on Explorer, notice the gray changes from the Calculator to explore and back and forth again. So that's how you can tell what's currently in front on the windows. So you can see the gray moves back and forth as we choose different applications.
All right. Now, Chip, can I choose different apps to put down on the taskbar that I might use frequently?
Absolutely. That's entirely what it's meant for. So we're going to show you how to do that a little bit later.
Okay.
So moving on over to the right, we have what's called the system tray. And this is very familiar. It's been in previous versions of Windows, really since Windows 95. This has been over here. You've got the clock, you've got the calendar, you have some other icons. And notice there's a little up arrow here, which means there's more icons than it can show. If we click on that, it'll show what else is in there.
I see.
Some of these icons are the same as they've been in previous versions of Windows. So this one tells me about the network that I'm connected to. If it were a wireless network, I could click there to choose the wireless network to connect to. This is my volume, so if I click here, I can change the volume of the speakers. What's new is this button right here. This is called the Action Center. If I click on that, the Action Center opens up from the right. Now if I have a touch screen, I can also swipe in from the right, and this will come in. You see something very much like this on Macs nowadays. You see it on a lot of phones and tablets. It's basically an area to group all of your notifications. So you can see here it's let me know what emails have come in today. If I scroll down, I'll also see there's some notifications from the system, there's some settings, there's some calendar entries of what's going on today. That's my Action Center. Now down here at the bottom, I have these preset buttons, and these are always here. If they're turned on, they're blue. If they're turned off, they're gray. So for example, over here in the bottom right is quiet hours. This is basically like a do not disturb button. So if you're in the middle of a meeting, or if you're in the middle of focusing on something and you don't want Windows to tell you every time an email comes in or every time a calendar entry comes up, turn on quiet hours. It'll stop bugging you. Now, it doesn't mean every program will stop bugging you, but anything that notifies through Windows, that will stop bugging you.
I like that.
Then when you're done, just turn it back off. We expect there's going to be a way to preset that on a schedule. That's been the case with previous versions of Windows. It's not yet in Windows 10, but we think it's going to be in a future update.
We think so. We hope so.
We hope so. These other buttons, I can turn on and off Bluetooth. I can connect to a VPN. I can connect to another network. This is interesting. If I want to write a note, this button by default will bring up Microsoft OneNote. OneNote is a great little app for just jotting down notes, keeping track of things, keeping track of to-do lists or project ideas or whatever, and it's tied into that menu. Now you can change it to something else besides OneNote, and we'll show how to do that a little bit later. There's a whole list of settings for the whole computer, and we can get to that with this All Settings button. It's also something over here in the Start menu. If I click here, there's also that Settings button there. It goes to the same place. The last thing I want to show you is tablet mode. A lot of people have these 2-in-1 devices now that are a tablet and they have a keyboard. With those devices, especially the Microsoft Surface tablets, if the keyboard is connected, it works like this. It believes that you want to work like a computer with a keyboard and a mouse. You can still use the touchscreen, but everything looks like this. If you take the keyboard off, it'll automatically ask to switch to tablet mode. And if it doesn't ask, you can use this button to force it. We're going to go ahead and do that here. And notice what happens. Let me close the Action Center. So in tablet mode, everything's taking up the full screen. It looks a lot more like Windows 8 did, especially here on the Start screen. So here's those same tiles that we saw in our Start menu before, but now they're taking up the entire screen. Notice my taskbar is still here, but now there's fewer buttons and they're further apart, so it's easier to hit with your thumb if you're using a tablet. If I want to get to the rest of my programs, I have this button up here in the top. And this gives me that same menu that I saw before on the Start menu. So if I want to open my calculator, now instead of opening in the window, it takes the full screen. So in tablet mode, it assumes that you're on a tablet, that you want everything big, that you want it easy to touch with your thumbs, and it adjusts everything that it can accordingly. Now if you don't want to be in tablet mode, it's easy enough. Go back to the Action Center and turn off tablet mode. Now if I go back to calculator, it's still full screen, but I can make it smaller again. And that looks more like a normal application.
Right.
So in a nutshell, that's how you get around in Windows 10.
That's pretty easy. It's a lot easier than 8 and 8.1 and 9, certainly. So I don't think we need a training video at all.
Well, but since we're still here,
yes.
why don't we show how to log into Windows 8 in the next module?
Logging in. I got to know how to log in. Yes.